As The Rock's eldest daughter, Alana, strolls home from dance classes, she unwittingly stumbles into the path of a racist and biased cop who confronts her, wrongfully assuming she's up to no good. Things take a drastic turn for the worse as the cop physically drags her towards his police car, causing her to trip and hurt her knees. Little does this cop know he has just picked the wrong person to mess with, as he's about to come face to face with Alana's father, none other than the formidable and powerful Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson. Subscribe and like this video to see how the story unfolds. Dusk settles over a sleepy suburb, its calmness broken only by the gentle rhythm of Alana's footsteps as she strolls down the street, a vision in her dance leotard and slippers. With her backpack, a loyal companion to many late nights at the studio, slung effortlessly over her shoulder, Alana's humming fills the quiet evening air, its melody dancing in tandem with her youthful vigor. She's blissfully unaware of the sinister presence lurking in the shadows of the nearby bushes. Just as the last rays of sunlight slip beneath the horizon, the suburban serenity is shattered by the wail of approaching sirens. Alana, startled from her musical reverie, turns to see a police cruiser screeching to a halt by the curb, its flashing blue and red lights bathing the street in an eerie glow. A lone officer steps out, his uniform pressed to perfection, the badge on his chest gleaming like a beacon in the twilight. Officer Grayson, his voice projecting authority, calls out to Alana, his words cutting through the stillness of the night. "Hey, you!" he barks, his tone leaving no room for uncertainty. "Where do you think you're going?" Alana, her heart racing, stops in her tracks, the calmness she had enjoyed only moments ago dissolving as she tries to comprehend why this officer is addressing her. "Alana, I'm on my way home, sir," she answers, swallowing her rising fear. Officer Grayson, his expression a mix of superiority and amusement, exits his vehicle, his body radiating an unsettling arrogance. As he strolls towards Alana, his smug grin widens like a predator sizing up its prey. With each step, the distance between them dwindles, the gap closing like a noose tightening around Alana's throat. Grayson, standing before her now, looms over Alana with a confidence that borders on malice. Officer Grayson leans in, his voice low and insinuating. "This isn't your neighborhood, is it?" he asks, his words laced with accusation. "You sure you're not up to something, a young girl like you, walking alone at this hour?" Alana shifts uncomfortably under the weight of Grayson's scrutiny, her mind racing for an explanation that might satisfy his suspicions. "Alana, I'm just on my way home from dance class." Alana's words stumble over each other like marbles rolling down a flight of stairs. Her nerves, once taut and contained, begin to unravel like a ball of yarn. "I live just a few blocks away," she stammers, her eyes darting from Grayson's face to the cruiser behind him, desperately seeking an escape from this unwanted encounter. "I'm not doing anything wrong." But Grayson's expression remains unchanged, his face a mask of self-assured skepticism. Officer Grayson's smirk widens, stretching across his face like a ray. His voice, dripping with mockery, cuts through the growing tension like a scalpel. "Sure you do," he taunts, his words full of contemptuous disbelief. "Let me see some ID." Alana's hands fidget nervously, searching her pockets for her wallet. With shaking fingers she withdraws her student ID and offers it to Grayson. With lightning speed, Grayson snatches the ID from Alana's trembling grasp, his fingers closing around it with a possessive intensity. His smirk, an ever-present fixture on his face, takes on a smugness that borders on cruelty. His eyes scan the ID, seemingly savoring the power he wields in this moment. Grayson lets out a derisive snort, tossing the ID back to Alana with a dismissive flick of his wrist. "Ha, Alana Johnson," he sneers, his tone mocking. "You're not one of those famous Johnsons, are you? The rich and famous don't usually slum it around here." His words cut deep, each syllable a dagger aimed at Alana's sense of self-worth. But she knows better than to engage with his cruelty, her face a mask of stoic resolve. Alana, her voice steeled by a newfound resolve, squares her shoulders and meets Grayson's gaze head-on. "Actually I am," she says, defiance and pride surging through her words. "My dad." But before she can finish, Grayson raises a hand, cutting her off with a wave of dismissive arrogance. "Grayson, yeah, save the sob story. You think your last name gives you special privileges? Well, I've got news for you." Alana, her heart hammering in her chest, tries to retreat, to put some distance between herself and the officer's looming presence. But before she can take more than a single step, Grayson's fingers close around her arm like a vice, jerking her back towards him with a vicious yank. "Grayson, where do you think you're going, huh? You're not leaving until I say so." His grip tightens, the pain shooting through Alana's arm like a lightning bolt. Alana's voice, no longer muted by fear, flares to life, its volume startling even herself. "Hey! Let go of me," she demands, struggling to pull herself free from Grayson's grip. But his hold is unrelenting, his strength fueled by a venomous contempt that seems to grow with each passing second. Grayson, angry, "You little brat, you think you can talk to me like that? You're in a lot of trouble." With a forceful shove, Grayson propels Alana towards his squad car, her body crashing into the cold metal with a painful thud. Alana's feet, unable to keep pace with her momentum, tangle beneath her. With a sharp cry, she crumples to the ground, her knees scraping across the asphalt with a raw, visceral agony. The sound of her fall echoes down the street, a haunting percussion in this nighttime symphony of violence. As Alana's body cries out in protest, her mind rallies against the mounting terror. Her fingers, trembling but resolute, fumble for her phone, the touchscreen glowing like a beacon of hope in the darkness. With a single-minded focus, she dials the familiar number. Her father's contact saved as Dad. Each ring seems to take an eternity, the sound cutting through the night like a prayer. Alana's plea, raw and unguarded, speaks of a vulnerability that goes deeper than her current situation. Her voice, fractured by fear and pain, carries a desperate urgency that pierces the air like a scream in the night. "Dad, I need you," she sobs, the words tumbling from her lips in a torrent of emotion. "It's Officer Grayson, he grabbed me, I'm scared." The line is silent, save for the shallow rasp of Alana's breath. The scene shifts to a spacious office, its walls adorned with accolades and awards. At the head of a sleek mahogany table sits The Rock, his posture one of focused intensity as he meets with a group of executives. But in a heartbeat, the gravity of the business meeting evaporates like a mirage as The Rock's phone chimes. His gaze snaps to the caller ID, his expression transforming from stern business mogul to protective father in an instant. "Alana," he murmurs, his voice holding a raw protectiveness that brooks no argument. The Rock's voice, while still measured and calm, contains a stormy undercurrent that hints at his rage simmering just below the surface. "Alana," he repeats, each syllable a fervent plea. "What's wrong? Are you okay? What's going on?" Even in this moment of uncertainty, The Rock's demeanor commands attention, his presence an immovable anchor in the shifting tides of Alana's distress. Alana's words, choked with tears, cut through the phone like a scalpel, carving deep into The Rock's heart. "Cop," she cries, the anguish palpable in her voice. "He stopped me and he grabbed me, he pushed me to the ground." The Rock's expression hardens, his jaw clenching like a vice. Rage, hot and insistent, coils through him like a serpent, its venomous fangs poised to strike. The Rock, voice like steel, "Where are you? I'm coming to get you." The Rock's truck, its wheels screaming in protest, skids to a stop mere feet from the altercation. The door swings open, unleashing a force of nature that shakes the very ground. Like a wrathful god descended from the heavens, The Rock emerges, the streetlights illuminating his chiseled physique, his gaze burning with righteous fury. Grayson, whose arrogance moments before seemed impenetrable, falters under the weight of The Rock's. He takes a step back, his expression shifting from smugness to stunned disbelief. Officer Grayson, his earlier bravado now tinged with uncertainty, attempts a weak jibe at The Rock's arrival. "A rescue mission?" he sneers, his words dripping with sarcasm. "Come to save the little princess from the big bad cop?" But his humor falls flat, a sad attempt to deflect from the underlying tension crackling like static in the air. The Rock, his attention fixed solely on Alana's well-being, strides towards her with a single-minded intensity, as if possessed by a father's primal instinct to protect his young. Kneeling before her, he cups her face in his massive hands, his expression a potent blend of concern and unflinching determination. "Are you okay?" he asks, his voice a gentle rumble. "Did he hurt you?" Alana, her tears drying on her cheeks, sniffles softly and gestures towards Grayson, her expression a mix of defiance and lingering fear. "I'm fine, Dad," she says, her voice steadier now, a hint of her characteristic strength resurfacing. "He grabbed me for no reason. I told him I was on my way home, but he wouldn't listen." The Rock, his expression hardening into a granite mask, turns his attention to Grayson, who's shifted uncomfortably under the weight of their scrutiny. The Rock rises to his full height, his physique dwarfing Grayson like a giant before an ant. As he turns to face Grayson, his expression hardens into a visage of controlled rage, like a volcano preparing to erupt. His eyes, dark and piercing, bore into Grayson's soul, dissecting the man before him with a singular focus. Grayson, his bravado faltering, takes a step back, suddenly aware of the precariousness of his situation. He opens his mouth to speak, but the Rock cuts him off, his voice low and dangerous. The Rock's question hangs in the air like a guillotine blade, its blade poised to fall with deadly precision. "You touched my daughter," he repeats, his voice dropping an octave, a harbinger of the wrath to come. Grayson, mistaking the Rock's silence for acquiescence, straightens his shoulders, a smirk pulling at the corner of his lips. "She was being uncooperative," he says, his voice dripping with a smug satisfaction. "Had to teach her some respect. Girls these days, eh?" He chuckles, his tone mocking and condescending. But the laughter dies on his lips as the Rock advances, his footsteps echoing like thunderclaps in the night. The Rock's proximity transforms Grayson's confidence into fear, his arrogance crumbling like sandcastles under a rising tide. With each step the Rock takes, Grayson takes another back, as if trying to outrun the wrath of an approaching tsunami. "Respect?" the Rock repeats, his voice low and filled with menace. "You think shoving a teenage girl to the ground is teaching respect?" His eyes, burning with the fury of a father scorned, drill into Grayson's soul. Grayson, his hand closing around the wooden baton at his belt, tries to reassert his authority. "Back off, big guy," he warns, the tremble in his voice betraying his fear. "I'm the law here." But the Rock, his own hands clenched into fists the size of bowling balls, laughs, a low, terrifying sound that seems to shake the very earth beneath their feet. "The law?" the Rock snorts. "If you were a real cop, you'd be upholding the law, not hiding behind it." The Rock's words, uttered with the icy certainty of a man about to mete out justice, are a death knell for Grayson's hopes of escaping this confrontation unscathed. "Not tonight, you're not," the Rock declares, his voice like a judge passing sentence. Grayson, his bravado now a distant memory, backpedals faster, trying to maintain distance between him and the towering behemoth stalking towards him. In a desperate attempt to defend himself, Grayson swings his baton with the ferocity of a cornered animal, hoping to strike a crippling blow. But the Rock, his reflexes honed by years of training and discipline, effortlessly catches the wooden weapon, the sound of splintering wood echoing through the night. With a casual flick of his wrist, he snaps the baton in two, the shattered pieces falling to the pavement like shards of Grayson's authority. The Rock's words, heavy with the promise of retribution, seem to bend the very air around them. "You just made the worst mistake of your life," he growls, his voice like a rumble of impending doom. Grayson, his eyes darting around in panic, looks for an escape route, but he's backed out into a corner, his options dwindling with every passing second. Grayson, whispering, "Please don't do this." In a blur of motion, the Rock unleashes a devastating display of physical prowess that leaves Grayson reeling. His movements, honed by years in the squared circle, are a symphony of controlled power, a ruthless efficiency that belies his rage. He spins Grayson around, disarming him with a swift twist of his wrist, and locks him into a rear-naked chokehold, his massive arms vices of strength. With a calmness that borders on serenity, the Rock pulls Grayson close, his lips grazing the terrified officer's ear. Grayson, his fear now a palpable force, thrashes wildly in the Rock's grip, his limbs flailing like a drowning man, grasping for a lifeline. "Please don't hurt me," he cries out, his voice trembling with desperation. In a futile attempt to escape, he lunges towards the cruiser, his eyes fixed on the safe haven of the driver's seat. But the Rock, as agile as he is powerful, intercepts Grayson's path, his body a wall of muscle that Grayson crashes into like a wave against rocks. The Rock, his voice an icy whisper of menace, glares down at the defeated Grayson, his body trembling in a mixture of fear and exhaustion. "You're not going anywhere," he says, his words dripping with contempt. "We're going to make sure everyone knows what kind of cop you really are. We're going to make sure you never hurt another innocent person again." With a sharp shove, he pushes Grayson down to his knees, his face pressed into the cold, hard ground. And then he reaches for his phone, dialing a number with cold precision. As the night sky paints the scene in shades of inky darkness, the flashing lights of police cruisers converge on the street, their sirens an eerie chorus against the backdrop of suburban silence. Amidst the growing confusion, Captain Morales emerges from the sea of uniforms, his expression a blend of worry and determination. "Morales, what the hell's going on here?" he barks, his gaze fixing on the Rock, the prone form of Grayson by his feet. "Someone tell me what's happening." The Rock stands his ground, his eyes locked on Morales, his posture unflinching. The Rock, his voice calm but unwavering, lays out the sequence of events, painting a damning portrait of Grayson's behavior. "Your officer assaulted my daughter for no reason," he says, his voice reverberating with a righteousness that commands attention. "He grabbed her, shoved her to the ground. She was just walking home." As he speaks, the witnesses, their eyes wide with fear and anger, nod in agreement, their testimonies sealing Grayson's fate. Morales, his face a mask of consternation, stares down at Grayson, a tangle of shame and fury roiling within him. Morales's voice cuts through the night air, its sharpness rivaled only by the rage simmering just below the surface. "Hand over your badge and gun," he orders, each word a gunshot in its finality. "You're done. You have no business being in a uniform if you think this kind of behavior is acceptable. You're a disgrace to the badge." Grayson, defeated and cowering on the ground, surrenders his badge and weapon, his fingers fumbling with the task, his face contorted in a mixture of shock and defeat. Grayson, his voice faltering, begins to stammer out a defense, his words tangled in excuses and half-truths. I thought she was," he pleads, his desperation palpable in the air. But Morales, his patience worn thin, shuts him down with a thunderous crack of his voice. "Morales, enough, I don't want to hear it. You assaulted a teenage girl. If it wasn't for the Rock here, God knows what you might have done." Back in the warmth and safety of their home, the Rock sits beside Alana, his massive frame almost comically dwarfed by the delicate care he takes as he tends to her scraped knee. His hands, large and calloused from years of hard work, move with surprising gentleness as he dabs away the blood with a cotton swab. The Rock, soothing. "That's it, Angel, just a few more seconds and we'll get you cleaned up, good as new." Alana, her face a picture of gratefulness, turns towards her father, her eyes shining with unshed tears. "Thanks for coming, Dad," she says, her voice trembling with the raw emotion she's barely holding in check. "I don't know what would have happened if you hadn't showed up when you did." The Rock's expression softens, his eyes glistening with unshed tears of his own. The Rock, with tenderness, "I'll always be there for you, Alana. You're my girl. I love you." As the camera pans out, the father and daughter embrace, their bodies creating a single silhouette against the warm ambient glow of their home. The love they share, unbreakable and fierce, pulses through the scene, its strength radiating outward like a wave of light. In the background, a voiceover, deep and resonant, speaks the words that sum up the story's message. In a world where injustice rears its ugly head, sometimes it takes a hero or a father to stand up and make things right. The Rock in this case was both.